Welcome to the Retaliation Realm channel. We hope you enjoy today's story. I heard Maxwell's voice through the crack of his study door. Yeah, I managed to convince Ally to quit her fancy marketing job a few years ago. She said it was to focus on the boys, but really, I just didn't want her out earning me. Laughter erupted from his friends. My heart sank. For 18 years, I believed Maxwell's lies about us being partners. I left my promising career at his insistence, pouring my life into supporting his business goals and raising our twin sons, Oliver and Eli. All this time, he saw me as nothing more than a trophy wife to control and subdue. I stormed into the kitchen, fuming. The counter was cluttered with cleaning supplies, another chore on my never-ending list. I gripped the edge until my knuckles turned white, struggling to process this harsh reality. Mom, you okay? Eli stood at the entrance, brow furrowed with concern. I wanted to protect him and Oliver from the ugly truth. Forcing a smile, I replied, just stressed about the party preparations this weekend. Eli hesitated, clearly sensing my distress, but nodded. We can help set up if you want. Thank you, sweetie. I hugged him tightly, my brave 16-year-old boy. At that moment, I vowed to shield my sons from Maxwell's toxicity at all costs. Days passed in a blur as I played the subservient wife, stewing inside with every falsely chipper. Yes, dear, felt like betraying my true self, but I knew I needed to tread carefully for the sake of my plans. The day of Maxwell's corporate party arrived. I donned on a fitted black dress, applying makeup to conceal the anguish and fatigue etched on my face. My reflection stared back hauntingly, a hollow shell of the confident woman I used to be. Oliver and Eli weren't fooled. You look nice, Mom, but are you sure you're okay? Oliver asked quietly. Mustering all my strength, I assured them, I'm fine, boys. Now, let's go celebrate your dad's success, shall we? That night, I plastered on a smile as Maxwell's arm snaked around my waist, parading me like a prized possession. His oily coworkers fawned over him, patting his back like he was some man among men. I felt sick, but underneath my polished veneer, a fierce determination burned. Maxwell had awoken a fire within me, and he was about to get burned. That night, I tossed and turned, Maxwell's snores mocking me. How could I have been so blind? Flashes of his deception played on a loop, his insistence that I leave my job for the family, his smug grin as he belittled my ambition in front of his friends. A rage simmered within me. The next morning, I decided to check our finances. Maybe it was just my imagination, but something felt off. I logged into our joint account and saw large sums funneled into an unfamiliar investment labeled Cayman Holdings. My heart raced as I scrambled to find an explanation. Hey, what's up with these Cayman transfers? I asked with forced casualness when Maxwell emerged. He froze mid-sip of his coffee. It's just a new venture I'm working on. You know how it is with high finance stuff, he replied, but his eyes avoided mine. Really? Because it looks more like you're squirreling money away, I challenged, jaw clenched. Maxwell's eyes narrowed. Careful, Ally. You're out of your depth here, he warned before I could respond. Oliver and Eli shuffled in, oblivious to the tension crackling between us. Maxwell immediately slipped back into his charismatic persona. Over the next few weeks, I noticed other discrepancies, expenses labeled client entertainment, matching the dates of his supposed business trips. More damningly, his phone buzzed constantly with texts from an unlisted number he quickly dismissed whenever I entered the room. One night, after the boys went to bed, I finally confronted him. Who is she, Maxwell? He dared to feign ignorance. What are you talking about? The someone you're having an affair with, I exploded, unable to contain my rage any longer. The shady bank transfers, constant texting, unexplained expenses. His face contorted in anger. You're going to accuse me after I've provided everything for this family? By lying and cheating? What about the sacrifices I made for you, Maxwell? His lip curled in a snarl. Oh, spare me the martyr act. You gave up that fancy career of yours because I didn't want some homewrecker tempting my wife away from her duties, he spat. The cruelty in his words left me reeling. In that moment, I saw him for the first time, a narcissistic, abusive man who viewed me as nothing more than a possession to control. Oliver and Eli stood at the top of the stairs, eyes wide with horror at the scene unfolding below. Maxwell noticed them and quickly switched gears. Eli, please think of the boys. Why are you letting your imagination run wild like this? You know I'd never betray you, he said, lying effortlessly. The ease with which he lay chilled me to the bone. Meeting his gaze steadily, I stated with finality, I'm done being blind, Maxwell. This marriage is over. The next few weeks were a whirlwind as Maxwell and I attended social gatherings, putting on an increasingly strained united front. Rumors were swirling, and I knew his circle of privileged pals had started gossiping about our fractured marriage. At an excruciating corporate gala, I finally got my proof. Maxwell was schmoozing with his usual swagger when a beautifully dressed woman sauntered over and draped herself over his arm. He barely flinched as she nuzzled against him. My vision blurred with white-hot rage. This was the woman Maxwell had been unfaithful with, the one he'd been spending our money on, lying through his teeth about. I stormed over, every ounce of pain and humiliation fueling my steps. Get your hands off my husband, I snarled, ripping her away from his embrace. Maxwell's eyes widened in panic as his deceit was exposed. Eli, honey, this isn't what it looks like. Save it, I cut him off. I know all about your lies and cheating, you pathetic excuse for a man. The woman looked between us in shock before hurling a drink in my face and stalking off. Maxwell grabbed my arm roughly, hissing, Look what you've done, you hysterical shrew. I wrenched free, unflinching, even as his nails left marks. I want a divorce. We're through. Back at home, Maxwell was unrepentant, raging like a feral animal backed into a corner. You think you can just walk away with half of everything I've built? He roared, smashing a vase against the wall. After I gave you a life of luxury. Luxury? I shouted back, standing my ground. You mean the gilded cage you trapped me in? I sacrificed my dreams and my identity for you, and I provided for this family. He towered over me menacingly. Without me, you'd be nothing. I'd rather be nothing than stay with a deceitful, abusive snake like you, I spat, his face twisting with malice. You're going to regret this. I'll bury you in court and make sure you never see a dime or those brats of yours again, he threatened. At that moment, the man I had loved and built a life with was gone, replaced by a vicious monster. But I refused to be a victim any longer. As he advanced on me, fist raised, Oliver and Eli rushed in and shielded me. Don't you dare touch our mom. Oliver shouted, trembling but defiant. The sight of my brave sons standing up to their bully of a father seemed to snap Maxwell out of his rage. He lowered his fist, chuckling darkly. Have it your way, but this war is just beginning. Those words would haunt me in the days to come as I prepared for the battle of my life against the man who had stolen so much from me already. The next morning, I sat across from a stern-faced divorce attorney named Jessica as I recounted the hellish unraveling of my marriage. She took meticulous notes. Mrs. Wilkins, I'm not going to sugarcoat this, she said solemnly. Your husband's financial manipulations and infidelity give you strong grounds, but he's also clearly a vindictive man who will fight dirty to maintain control. I steeled myself, pushing aside the part of me that still recoiled at hearing divorce. I'm prepared for an ugly battle. I just need to know my sons and I will be taken care of, I said firmly. Jessica nodded. We'll pursue full custody based on his instability and document every attempt at retaliation. As for assets, we'll use forensic accountants to hunt down any hidden money trails. As I left her office, my mind raced with the monumental task ahead. Maxwell's ego and sociopathic devotion to projecting perfection meant he wouldn't back down easily. I needed ammunition, proof of his misdeeds he couldn't deny. That's when I remembered Alara, a tech genius from my old job who now ran an elite cybersecurity firm. If anyone could track Maxwell's digital footprints, it was her. I met Alara at a quiet cafe, my heart pounding as I poured out the sordid details to her. To her credit, she remained professional, nodding slowly. Let me get this straight. You need concrete evidence of your husband's shady finances and affair, she asked grimly. Anything that can expose what a lying, deceitful monster he truly is, I affirmed. Alara's eyes hardened. Consider it done. That bastard is about to learn how dangerous a woman scorned can be when she has the right resources. True to her word, within days Alara had hacked into Maxwell's devices and financial accounts. A treasure trove of damning evidence materialized, incriminating texts and emails to his mistress, offshore bank transfers to secret holdings, even video stills from hotels. Clutching the meticulous dossier, I felt a rush of gratitude and newfound power. Maxwell's carefully curated facade was crumbling. Even Oliver and Eli, initially loyal to their dad, couldn't deny the cold, hard facts once presented. The betrayal in their eyes when video evidence confirmed his infidelity cut deeper than any dagger. How could he do this to you, to us? Oliver choked out, devastated. I pulled them both into a fierce embrace. I'm so sorry, my loves, but we're going to get through this together as a family. I promise. With Alara's continued technical assistance and the legal groundwork laid, I felt a strange sense of calm come over me. Maxwell had underestimated me at every turn, arrogantly expecting his lies to go unchallenged. Well, the gloves were off now. It was time to make that bastard pay for shattering our lives by destroying his precious illusion of status and superiority. Over the next few weeks, I methodically executed my plans, aided by a network of supportive women who had faced similar marital nightmares. Stephanie, a fiery divorcee, became my closest confidant. The courts are still biased towards men with money and power, she warned during one of our clandestine meetings. We need to build an airtight case that leaves no room for Maxwell's slimy lawyers to twist the narrative. With her guidance, I secured hidden cameras to monitor Maxwell's volatile behavior, gathering evidence of his escalating, menacing outbursts aimed at me and the boys. I also moved funds to a secure account he couldn't access. You're cutting off the puppet master's strings, Stephanie said approvingly. He's used to controlling the purse strings and using money to bully his way through life. Meanwhile, Alara continued supplying a steady stream of intel from Maxwell's devices and communications, new money trails, X-rated messages with his mistress, even audio recordings of his profanity-laced rants about me. The woman I was regaining her voice, her power. For too long, I had been paralysed by Maxwell's masterful gaslighting, but now, with undeniable proof, the truth was a brilliant light, obliterating his twisted lies. As D-Day approached, I felt an odd sense of pity for the sad, small man Maxwell had revealed himself to be a hollow husk obsessed with status over substance. Everything had been a sham, including the vows he never valued. Oliver and Eli watched in awe as I surgically dismantled Maxwell's ruse. For years, he had manipulated them into believing I was a fragile, hysterical woman undeserving of their father's success. Yet here I was, a phoenix rising from the ashes of deception, blazing with brilliant clarity. "Mom, we had no idea," Eli whispered, shaking his head in disbelief after viewing the evidence. "We're so sorry we doubted you." I pulled them close, forgiveness filling my heart. They were the true victims in this tragedy, callously used as pawns in Maxwell's ego games. All that matters now is moving forward as a strong family unit. My loves, your dad's fool's gold has finally been exposed. On the front lines, Stephanie's network also employed cyber specialists to backtrace Maxwell's financial schemes, catching illegal transfers, hidden assets, and even tax evasion and embezzlement from his Fortune 500 company. He's not just going to lose his house and half his net worth, Stephanie updated me gleefully. That scumbag is facing criminal indictments and serious prison time once we present all this. Her words filled me with fierce satisfaction. Maxwell always had an overblown sense of untouchability. Well, he was about to get a brutal reality check, a fair punishment for the lives he'd so casually decimated. As the final court date loomed, I found myself surprisingly at peace. The veil had been lifted, leaving Maxwell and his sordid misdeeds exposed for all to see. There would be no more games, no more manipulation. Justice, cold and impartial, was coming for him at last, and I couldn't wait to watch it unfold. The annual Wilkins family barbecue was usually a mundane affair of Maxwell basking in adulation from relatives, but this year I had other plans. It was the perfect stage for the grand unveiling of his true character. As our extended clan gathered in the backyard, I discreetly distributed copies of the damning evidence Alara had compiled, ledgers of offshore accounts, recordings of Maxwell's foul rants, even video stills from his hotel tryst with his mistress. Shock and revulsion rippled through the crowd. Maxwell remained oblivious, loudly recounting embellished golf stories until I clinked my glass, calling for attention. Before we begin, I'd like to share some enlightening information about our esteemed family patriarch, I announced, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Maxwell's bravado instantly dissolved as I displayed the incriminating videos and bank statements, laying bare his sordid misdeeds. A chorus of gasped condemnation erupted. "How could you, son?" His father's face crumpled with stunned betrayal. "The lies, the affairs, stealing from your own company." For once, the ever-glib Maxwell was rendered speechless, his mouth agape like a gasping fish. I reveled in his impotent fury as the cries and outrage intensified. "You bastard," one uncle roared, fists clenched. "Treating your wife this way while living like a king with embezzled millions." Uncles, aunts, and cousins all rounded on him with heated denunciations of his despicable actions. Through it all, Maxwell could only sputter weakly, his sham of a dignified life crumbling. The final brutal humiliation was delivered by the last person I expected, his mistress, Clara. She stormed in, eyes blazing, clearly made aware of the proceedings. "You told me you were getting divorced, you lying sack." She slapped Maxwell hard across the face before turning to face the shocked guests. "He's been pulling the wool over all of your eyes, acting like some upright family man." At that moment, Maxwell seemed to shrink into himself, the hollow husk left when his aura of smug dominance was shattered. I watched with grim satisfaction as the men who had envied and enabled his deplorable behavior turned their backs in disgust. My brave sons stood by my side, revolted by the stranger their father had become. Oliver shook his head slowly with crushing disappointment. "All these years thinking you were some alpha male to admire and follow in your footsteps," he muttered. "Turns out you're just a selfish, manipulative coward." For all his pompous posturing about protecting the family, Maxwell had irrevocably fractured it through his hubris and infidelity. As the anguished confrontations raged, I felt a profound sense of liberation. His hollow lies had been vaporized in the light of justice. When the circus finally died down, I approached a despondent, shrunken Maxwell. "We're through here. The evidence speaks for itself, and the courts will ensure you face the consequences," I told him firmly. His eyes finally met mine, hollow and resigned. "You did it, ally," he croaked hoarsely. "You obliterated me." I simply nodded, understanding that this sad, broken person before me would wallow in regret. My path forward, however, was clear and emboldened. "Consider this the price for your betrayal, Maxwell. Now I'm going to give our sons the life you never could, one of honor, integrity, and truth." In the aftermath of the disastrous family barbecue, Maxwell became increasingly unhinged, lashing out at me and the boys with frightening volatility. I could see the desperate animal cornered by the truth. "You've turned my flesh and blood against me," he raged during one particularly ugly episode, smashing a lamp against the wall. "After everything I did to provide for this goddamn family." Oliver and Eli shrank back, eyes wide with fear at their father's frenzied outburst, but I remained resolute, shielding them protectively. "We're done being intimidated by your tantrums," I stated firmly. "The evidence speaks for itself. You're a liar, a cheater, and an embezzler who only cared about appearances." Maxwell's face contorted in an uglier sneer. "You self-righteous. You think some flimsy paperwork will undo my success? I'll bury you and those traitorous punks in court." Despite his bluster, I could see the cracks intensifying. Maxwell's career was in ruins thanks to the mountain of financial crimes Alara had helped unearth. Federal investigators were circling like sharks, pressuring him to cut a deal before prosecuting him to the fullest extent. In a last, desperate gambit, he tried to turn Oliver and Eli against me using noxious manipulation tactics that had worked for years. "Boys, you have to see how unhinged your mother has become," he pleaded with false anguish during a supervised visit. "This obsessive campaign to punish me at any cost is unhealthy. To my immense pride, the twins remained unmoved, their eyes flashing with new wisdom and resolve. "We've seen the proof, Dad," Oliver stated evenly. "The lies, the affairs, stealing from your company, it's all there in black and white." Maxwell's eyes narrowed to slits. "So you're taking that woman's side over your own father's?" Eli matched his brother's steely gaze. "We're on the side of truth, Dad, something you've never understood the value of." In that devastating moment, Maxwell realized the depth of his son's conviction. I saw the impact of Maxwell's toxicity lift from my sons. For so long, he had poisoned them with his twisted narcissistic views about status and dominance, but now they had reclaimed their integrity. The legal avalanche that followed was brutal and thorough, thanks to Alera's cyber forensic skills. No offshore account went unexamined, and no cooked book was left unopened. The evidence was irrefutable. Prosecutors gleefully dragged the once smug corporate honcho through very public indictments, charges of tax evasion, money laundering, defrauding shareholders, and even illegal stock manipulations. Under the weight of the evidence, Maxwell's pricey legal team quickly motioned for plea deals. During his sentencing hearing, he professed contrition with mournful, sanitized statements approved by his PR handlers, but I could see the truth in his eyes, bitter, impotent fury at his ruination. "Mr. Wilkins, your legacy of misconduct is almost too staggering to fathom," the stern judge declared. "Society placed immense trust in you as a business leader, and you repaid that trust with staggering greed and depravity." Turning to face me and the boys, she continued firmly, "which makes your cruelty toward your own family all the more unconscionable. The court hereby remands you to 15 years in federal prison." As the guards led Maxwell away in shackles, our eyes met one last time. I felt nothing but pity for the broken, superficial husk he had become. The evil he had inflicted was its punishment. "This isn't over," he mouthed viciously. I simply shook my head. For me and my sons, it was a glorious new beginning of truth and redemption. The nightmare was finally over. The heavy oak door of the visitor room clanged shut as I entered, my heart pounding. This was the first time I'd laid eyes on Maxwell since that fateful day in court 2 years ago. His orange jumpsuit hung loosely on his diminished frame, his once confident swagger replaced by a hunched, broken demeanor. The mighty Maxwell Wilkins had fallen incredibly far. "You've got some nerve showing up here," he growled, refusing to meet my gaze. I fought back the flicker of pity, reminding myself of the trail of shattered lives and betrayal he left in his wake. This was the natural consequence of his reprehensible actions. "I'm not here for you," I stated calmly. "I'm here about the boys' college funds you tried to liquidate and funnel to your secret accounts before sentencing." His head snapped up, eyes burning with hatred. "You mean the money? I earned it. It should have been mine. It belonged to Oliver and Eli's future, which you never cared about," I shot back evenly. "The court has frozen those assets and incorporated them into my divorce settlement, as you're aware." Maxwell's fists clenched impotently. "You just can't stop trying to grind me into the dirt, can you, Alara? I'm simply making sure you can't sabotage our sons like you tried sabotaging me all those years." An uncomfortable silence stretched between us, thick with resentment. Finally, Maxwell seemed to deflate with resignation. "So is that it? You've won, the perfect victor getting her revenge at last." His tone dripped with bitterness. "Haven't you put me through enough public humiliation?" For a moment, a part of me relished in his misery, the agonizing reversal of the arrogant tycoon who had controlled my life through fear and intimidation tactics. But then I looked at the pitiful, shrunken creature before me and felt nothing but hollow. Tormenting him further would only perpetuate the toxic cycle he had started. "You're right, Maxwell. I have gotten my justice and regained my voice and identity that you tried so hard to silence and subjugate," I stated evenly. "But holding on to hatred and fixating on vengeance is exactly what poisoned you into the man you became. It's a path I refuse to follow." His brow furrowed with genuine confusion. "So then why are you here?" "To tell you that I'm moving forward by finally focusing on the things that truly matter, rebuilding my career, being there for our boys as they become men, and helping other women find their strength as I did." Maxwell seemed to shrink even smaller if it was possible. Perhaps a part of him recognized the resilience and integrity he had so callously tried to snuff out. "You did obliterate me, ally," he mumbled hollowly, in more ways than one. Staring at the shrunken, pathetic specter of the man who had once held such terrifying power, I felt something unexpected: pity. Because for all his bravado, his displays of wealth and status, Maxwell had never known what truly making yourself was all about. "I didn't obliterate you, Maxwell," I replied softly. "You did that to yourself the moment you decided hurting those closest to you was an acceptable price for propping up your ego and greed." With that, I rose and made my way to the exit, leaving the broken husk of my former tormentor behind. His cruel words and actions still haunted me in ways, but I refused to surrender my newfound freedom and integrity by allowing him to consume my life further. As I stepped outside and felt the warm sunlight on my face, I was struck by a profound sense of rebirth and possibility. The nightmare was finally over, and the path ahead branched out filled with optimism. My flourishing marketing consultancy was just the first step. I would continue rebuilding and growing, not just for myself, but to set an example of resilience and empowerment for other women in my position. The future was finally free of Maxwell's toxic stranglehold. Most importantly, I could now pour all my energy into being the supportive, nurturing presence my sons needed during these formative years. No more lies, no more facades, just unconditional love and guidance as Oliver and Eli blossomed into the good men I knew they could become. Inhaling deeply, I allowed the failures and trauma of the past to finally drift away. A new chapter was beginning, one of truth, inner strength, and controlling my destiny. The vicious cycle of hatred ended with me, and as I walked forward, I felt lighter than I had in decades. Thank you for being with us and listening until the end. If you found it interesting, please subscribe, give us a like, and leave your comments. We'll see you on the Retaliation Realm channel.